Welcome to our Return to Work series. We're going to go into returning to work or school after having a baby, things to consider like breastfeeding and continuing that, and pumping while you are at work or school. Oftentimes, this is a really difficult transition, and it can be hard to plan for, but also one we try to push off. It's important to start by knowing that federal law protects most employees in their right to pump while at work. Now, when it is pumping at work, sometimes there are state and specific employer guidelines that expand the protections, but overall, you should have appropriate break times and a safe and comfortable place to pump. Specifically, this is a private room that is safe from intrusion, shielded from view, and is not a bathroom. In preparation for your return to work, knowing your laws and rights is really important, but it's also really important to talk to your employer ahead of time. It might feel like a daunting conversation, but you want to make sure that you're on the same page. Does your employer have a breastfeeding policy specifically for them? Discussing what your return will look like with them ahead gives you time to ask more questions, see if there's anything else that you feel you need for more support, or if they're already doing all the things to know that you are ready. The last thing you want to do is get to your first day returning to work and realize that you don't have the things that you need to actually effectively pump at work. The most important thing that everybody thinks of is the pump itself. But you also want to consider the other parts. How are you going to travel with your pump and your parts back and forth from work? If you are going to bring your pump back and forth, maybe it will live in your office. You also want to think about when you're actually pumping. If you're pumping for a standard pumping session around 15 minutes and you're holding those parts to your body for that time, that might be fine for you. But you might also want to consider a hands-free pumping bra, and there are lots of options out there. There are some that you can wear all day and just use when you pump, or there are some that you can put on while you're pumping. Then you want to think about what you're going to do with the milk after, right? You pump and it's in the collection containers, but where are you going to store it? Now, do you want to put it in milk storage bags or an actual container? Does that consider a batch method? And we'll get into those details a little bit more. Something that a lot of people are doing during their early postpartum period is investing in more than one pump, which you don't always have to do. But if you do have more than one pump, one of the questions we get often is, what do I bring to work? Do I bring them both? Do I leave one at home? Or which one makes most sense? It really does depend on your situation and what your commute and your day at work looks like. So you're going to pick the pump that makes the most sense for what you're doing at work. If you're going to be moving around a lot and you have a wearable that you feel comfortable using and is effective, maybe that's what you use at work. Or if you are not moving around a lot, which I'm hoping you are sort of sitting and relaxing a little bit more, then you could use your tabletop pump at work, and maybe you use a different pump, more portable or hands-free, at home. And it really does depend on your preference. Now, some employers do actually have a multi-user pump at their office, and that is a multi-user pump where you would just have your separate collection kit or pump parts, and the pump motor would live at the office. So if that's something that your employer offers, then you don't even need to worry about bringing a pump back and forth if you feel comfortable using that multi-user. Another big question we get about the return to work is prepping a stash. And what does that look like? How big is it? How much milk? How do we prepare it? And so really, I want to try to reduce some of the stress around this. When we talk about a stash, a lot of people think about a freezer full of milk, and that is not necessarily what you're going for. If we are collecting milk before we return to work, we're storing it in the freezer, we're going for covering maybe a few pumping sessions or a few days of feeding baby. We're not going for an entire freezer full. Because really, when we're thinking about feeding a baby at 1, 2, 3 months postpartum, whenever your return to work or school is, what you're pumping during one day is typically what you're going to send to daycare or leave home with baby for the next day. The stash or the milk that you have stored is more for, if you're having a very stressful week, or if something happens where your supply dips or you're not able to pump, or there's some sort of interruption, you have those safeguards of milk ready to go as needed. For additional information, including about the laws and rights around pumping, please check out the description below. And don't forget, we have a lot more information and other videos in this series, as well as our other playlists.